NASA has confirmed that every planet in our solar system emits sound. Saturn hums, Jupiter pulses, the Earth herself sings. NASA has released actual audio recordings of these planetary frequencies, captured by space probes and converted into audible sound. And when you hear them, something in you recognizes them, not because you have heard them before, but because your body is made of the same stuff they are made of. Because vibration is not something that happens around you. Vibration is what you are. And here is the thing that changes everything once you really, truly understand it. If the universe is fundamentally vibrational, if every planet sings, if every cell in your body is in constant oscillation, then the idea that sound can heal you is not a New Age concept. It is a description of physical reality. The ancient Egyptians knew this, the Hindu rishis knew this, the Pythagoreans knew this, the Aboriginal Australians have been singing the world into existence for 60,000 years, and they knew this. And now, after decades of research, a growing body of neuroscientists, physicists, music therapists, and sound healers are confirming what every ancient tradition on Earth already understood. Sound is medicine, and it has always been medicine.
We're going beyond horizons, where the mind and spirit meet, where the body finds its balance and the soul feels complete. Every story, every journey, every healing step we take, we're living life with purpose, with every breath we make. Beyond horizons, we rise.
Welcome to Beyond Horizons. I am CJ Sugita-Jackson, and this is the show where ancient wisdom, modern science stop competing and start confirming each other. Every week, we take a topic that lives at the intersection of the metaphysical and the measurable, and we give it the full treatment it deserves: the history, the tradition, the peer-reviewed research, and the practical tools that help you actually use what you learn in your real life. Sound and music are universal. Every single human being on this planet has experienced that moment when a song entranced them completely, when a piece of music made them cry without knowing why, when a sound reached somewhere inside them that words could not touch. That experience is not random. It is not sentimental. It is biology, cosmology, and ancient wisdom all operating simultaneously. Today, we are going to understand exactly what is happening in those moments, and we are going to walk away with tools to use sound intentionally as a genuine healing practice in your daily life. Quick note before we dive in. Horizyns is a holistic wellness marketplace and community platform launching in 2026. If you are a seeker, a creator, or a practitioner in this space, this is being built just for you. Learn more or schedule a demo at www.horizynsinc.com. That's HORIZYNSINC.com. Link is in the show notes. Let's begin at the beginning, which is further back than most people realize. The oldest known musical instruments in the world are bone flutes discovered in the Swabian Jura region of Germany, dating to approximately 40,000 years ago. Not 4,000, 40,000. These were crafted from vulture bone and mammoth ivory with extraordinary precision. They are not crude experiments, they are refined instruments that required considerable skill to make and to play. Archaeologist Nicholas Conard at the University of Tübingen, who documented these instruments in Nature in 2009, proposed that music may have been a significant factor in the cognitive and cultural advantage that our ancestors held over the other hominid populations. Music was not an entertainment accessory to ancient human life. It may have been one of the foundations of it. From those first flutes, the story of music as medicine runs unbroken through every civilization that has left us a record. In ancient Egypt, the temples of resonance. In ancient Egypt, sound was understood as creative and divine force. The god Thoth was associated with the sacred word, and with the vibrational power of sound to create reality. Temple inscriptions document the use of specific chants, vocal toning, and sacred instruments in healing ceremonies. Priests trained in sonic healing arts used specific frequencies delivered through voice and instrument directly to the bodies of the unwell. The sistrum, a sacred rattle associated with the goddess Hathor, was understood to produce a specific frequency that cleared stagnant energy and restored emotional and spiritual harmony. Archaeological evidence suggests that the internal dimensions of certain Egyptian temples were specifically designed to produce standing wave resonance patterns, essentially tuning the entire temple structure into a sonic healing instrument. Researcher and acoustician John Stuart Reid has conducted acoustic studies inside the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid and documented extraordinary resonance properties that he believes were not accidental. The chamber resonates at frequencies that correspond to specific brainwave states. The ancient Egyptians, it appears, built their healing spaces with sound physics in mind. Pythagoras, the harmony of the spheres. Here is where ancient wisdom and modern science begin to converge. Pythagoras, the Greek philosopher and mathematician who lived in the 6th century BCE, is best remembered for the theorem that bears his name. But his most profound and least discussed work was on what he called the harmony of the spheres. Pythagoras believed that the cosmos operated according to mathematical and musical ratios, that the planets moved in patterns that corresponded to musical intervals, that the entire universe was, at its foundation, a musical system. He did not just theorize about this, he applied it therapeutically. According to his students, Pythagoras used specific musical modes to treat specific conditions. The Dorian mode for grounding and stability, the Phrygian mode for emotional release and spiritual elevation. He reportedly cured a young man of dangerous drunken rage by having a musician shift from a stimulating mode to a calming one. He prescribed specific musical intervals for depression, anxiety, and anger with the same precision a modern physician prescribes medication. Plato and Aristotle both wrote extensively about the emotional and moral effects of musical modes. Plato argued in the Republic that the music a society allows will shape the character of its citizens. He was not speaking poetically. He understood as the ancient world generally understood, that sound shapes the psyche. The Hindu tradition, Nada Yoga and the sacred Om. In ancient India, the tradition of Nada Yoga, the yoga of sound, held that the entire universe emerged from and is sustained by vibration. The sacred syllable Om, documented in the Mandukya Upanishad as the primordial sound underlying all existence, is not a symbol or a metaphor. It is understood as a literal vibrational frequency that the human vocal apparatus can produce to bring itself into resonance with the fundamental frequency of reality. The ragas of classical Indian music were a sophisticated therapeutic system. Each raga was associated with a specific time of day, a specific season, a specific emotional and physiological state, and a specific healing intention. The morning raga, Bhairav, was understood to promote clarity and spiritual awakening. The evening raga, Yaman, was understood to promote deep peace and emotional resolution. Playing the wrong raga at the wrong time was not just aesthetically incorrect, it was understood as physiologically harmful. The system was that precise. Aboriginal Australia, songlines, and 60,000 years of sound medicine. The oldest continuous musical tradition on Earth belongs to the Aboriginal peoples of Australia. The yidaki, commonly known as the didgeridoo, has been used as a healing instrument for at least 40,000 years, with some researchers suggesting the tradition may significantly be older. Aboriginal cosmology includes the concept of songlines, also called dreaming tracks, which are understood as the paths across the landscape along which the ancestor beings sang the world into existence during the dream time. To walk a songline is to retrace the creative act of the universe itself. To sing is to participate in the ongoing creation of reality. The vibroacoustic properties of the yidaki have attracted serious contemporary research. Studies at the Northern Territory University documented that yidaki playing produces infrasound frequencies between 0.5 and 3 Hz that correspond to delta brainwave activity. the deepest states of rest and healing available to the human nervous system. The ancient practitioners understood what contemporary researchers are now measuring. African tradition, Celtic tradition, and the universal pattern. In West African traditions, the drum is understood as a living being. The master drummer, the griot, holds the memory of an entire civilizations in rhythm and song. The talking drums of the Yoruba communicate specific messages through tonal patterns that mirror the tonal structure of the Yoruba language itself. The drum is not an instrument, it is a voice, a healer, a bridge between the human and the divine. In Celtic tradition, the bard was not an entertainer. The bard was a physician of the soul, a keeper of history, and a wielder of genuine power. Celtic law recognized that a skilled satirist's song could raise blisters on the skin of their target, and that a skilled healer's song could reduce fever and promote recovery. This was not a metaphor. It was taken as documented fact. Across every continent and every civilization that has left us a record, sound was understood as one of the most fundamental forces in human healing. The universality of that understanding in itself one of the most significant data points available to us, when every ancient culture on Earth independently arrives at the same conclusion. The conclusion deserves our serious attention. The ancient world did not believe that sound could heal because they were primitive. They believed it because they were paying extraordinarily careful attention to reality for an extraordinarily long time. The universe is vibration, what physics tells us. Let's start with the most fundamental level, because the most important thing modern physics has confirmed about sound and vibration is something the ancient traditions always asserted. Everything vibrates. At the subatomic level, what we call matter is not solid substance. It is energy in motion. Electrons orbit nuclei. Atoms oscillate. Molecules vibrate. Every cell in your body is in constant oscillation at specific frequencies. The heart generates an electromagnetic field measurable several feet outside the body. The brain produces oscillating electrical patterns we call brainwaves. Even your DNA, according to research by physicist Luc Montagnier, Nobel Prize laureate and co-discoverer of the HIV virus, emits electromagnetic signals that carry information in ways that current science is still working to fully understand. Now let's come back to NASA. Space is not silent. NASA's Voyager and Cassini space probes recorded electromagnetic vibrations in the plasma waves surrounding the planets and converted them into audible sound. The recordings are extraordinary. Saturn emits eerie, shifting tonal patterns that sound like something between a whale song and a thunderstorm. Jupiter produces deep, rolling resonances. Earth herself emits a frequency called the Schumann resonance at approximately 7.83 Hertz, a frequency that corresponds almost precisely to the alpha and theta brainwave states associated with meditation, creativity, and deep relaxation. The frequency of the Earth's electromagnetic field and the frequency of the human brain in its most peaceful and creative states are nearly identical. That is not a coincidence. That is coevolution. Sematics, sound made visible. Hans Jenny, a Swiss scientist and physician, spent decades in the mid-20th century studying what happens when sound meets physical matter. He called this field sematics, from the Greek word for wave. What he found was extraordinary, and has been replicated consistently since his foundational works, Sematics Volume 1 in 1967 and Volume 2 in 1974. When you expose a membrane covered with sand or liquid to a specific sound frequency, the particles arrange themselves into precise geometric patterns. These patterns are not random. They're consistent, reproducible, and extraordinarily beautiful. Mandala-like at some frequencies, fractal at others, and cellular at even others. Change the frequency and the pattern changes instantly, completely, as if the matter was waiting to be organized differently. Now consider this. Your body is approximately 60% water. Water, as sematics research demonstrates, is exquisitely responsive to vibrational input. Dr. Masaru Emoto, the Japanese researcher whose work on water crystal formation attracted enormous attention and significant controversy, documented what he claimed were measurable structural changes in water exposed to different sounds, music, and intentions. His research methodology has been challenged, and the scientific community continues to debate his specific claims. But the underlying principle that water responds to vibrational input has independent support in biophysics research. The body that is 60% water exposed to 40,000-year-old bone flutes, to Pythagorean musical modes, to Tibetan singing bowls, to the specific frequencies of sacred chant, is not experiencing something arbitrary. It is being organized, reorganized, and tuned. What the brain does with music. Neuroscientist Stefan Kolsch at the University of Tübingen, one of the most cited researchers in the field of music and the brain, has documented through neuroimaging studies that music activates more areas of the brain simultaneously than almost any other known stimulus. The visual cortex, the motor system, the limbic system responsible for emotion, the hippocampus involved in memory, the reward circuitry that releases dopamine, the prefrontal cortex involved in meaning-making and anticipation. Music does not just affect our mood. It reorganizes neural activity across the entire brain in ways that no other single stimulus consistently achieves. Rosalind Cartwright's research on the mood regulatory function of the sleeping brain, which we discussed in our dreams episode, found that REM dreaming processes emotional material in ways that waking analytical thought cannot. Music has been shown to do something remarkably similar. Research published in the journal Frontiers in Psychology documented that music specifically chosen for emotional resonance produces measurably deeper processing of difficult emotional states than verbal processing alone. Music reaches the limbic system, the emotional brain, through pathways that bypass the cortical filtering that language must pass through. This is why a song can make you cry before you know why. The music arrived before the analysis could intercept it. The 432 Hz versus 440 Hz debate, the full, honest story. Now, let's talk about something that generates more passionate discussion in the sound healing community than almost anything else. And let's talk about it honestly, which means giving you the full picture rather than a simplified version. Since 1939, the international standard for musical tuning has been A equals 440 Hz. Before that, tuning standards varied considerably across Europe and across history. Mozart composed with instruments tuned to approximately 421 Hz. Verdi, the Italian opera composer, advocated passionately for a standard of 432 Hz, and actually petitioned the Italian government to mandate it. Many Baroque and classical period instruments were tuned to various standards between 415 and 432 Hz. The story that circulates widely in sound healing communities is that the Nazi regime, through Joseph Goebbels, deliberately pushed for the 440 Hz standard as a means of psychological control, arguing that 440 Hz produces anxiety and dissonance, while 432 Hz is more harmonically aligned with natural mathematical ratios. This story is widely believed and frequently cited. Here is the honest assessment. The historical documentation linking the 440 Hz standardization, specifically to Nazi intent, is thin. The international standardization process was complex, involved multiple countries and organizations, and the primary drivers appear to have been practical rather than political. However, that does not resolve the underlying question, which is whether 432 Hz actually sounds or feels different, and whether it has different physiological effects than 440 Hz. Now here is where it gets genuinely interesting. A 2019 study published in the Journal of Integrative Medicine compared listener responses to the same musical piece played at 432 Hz and 440 Hz in a controlled setting. The 432 Hz version was associated with significantly low heart rate and blood pressure, and was rated as more relaxing by participants. The sample size was small and the research is preliminary. It is not definitive, but it is real, peer-reviewed, and worth knowing. What we can say with confidence is this. The relationship between specific frequencies and specific physiological states is a real and documented area of science. Is the difference between 432 and 440 Hz the critical variable? Or Is it simply one of many factors inside a much more complex system? That question deserves serious research. Artists who have chosen 432 Hz tuning for their recordings include Billie Eilish, whose entire recorded catalog uses non-standard tuning approaches with deliberate psychoacoustic intent. Coldplay's music of the Spheres album was composed and recorded with explicit attention to frequency and its effect on listener experience. Mozart and Verdi, as mentioned, were both documented advocates for lower tuning standards. The conversation is real, the science is emerging, and the fact that it is being taken seriously by both ancient traditions and contemporary artists and researchers is itself meaningful. The solfeggio frequencies, ancient tones rediscovered. In the 1990s, researcher Dr. Joseph Puleo, working with physician Dr. Leonard Horowitz, claimed to have rediscovered a set of 6 ancient musical tones embedded in the numerological structure of the Book of Numbers in the Bible. These tones, which Puleo and Horowitz called the solfeggio frequencies, correspond to a scale that predates the modern musical scale and was used in Gregorian chant. The 6 primary solfeggio frequencies are 396 Hz, 417 Hz, 528 Hz, 639 Hz, 741 Hz, and 852 Hz. Each is associated in the tradition with a specific healing property. The most studied and most discussed of these is 528 Hz, which Horowitz called the love frequency, or the miracle tone. He made the extraordinary claim that 528 Hz repairs DNA. Let's be appropriately careful here. This is exactly where the territory where genuine science and overreach can look similar from the outside. What the peer-reviewed research actually shows, a 2018 study published in the Journal of Addiction Research and Therapy, found that music at 528 Hz significantly reduced anxiety in patients in a clinical setting compared to a control group. A study published in the European Journal of Preventive Cardiology found that music therapy in general significantly reduced anxiety and blood pressure in cardiac patients. Research on the effects of specific frequencies on cellular activity is ongoing and genuinely preliminary. The specific claim that 528 Hz repairs DNA is not supported by robust peer-reviewed evidence. It is a hypothesis, not a confirmed finding. What we can say honestly, specific frequencies produce specific measurable physiological effects. The solfeggio frequencies have a genuine ancient lineage in Gregorian chant. The research on their therapeutic applications is real, but early, and the experience of listening to music tuned to these frequencies is reported by millions of people worldwide as genuinely different in quality from standard tune music. Binaural beats research adds another layer. Gerald Oster's foundational paper in Scientific American in 1973 documented that when slightly different frequencies are delivered to each ear, the brain generates a third frequency equal to the difference between the two. This frequency entrains brain activity towards specific states. Research has since confirmed binaural beats as effective for reducing anxiety, improving sleep quality, and supporting focused concentration. Binaural beat playlists on Spotify now number in the hundreds and collectively generate hundreds of millions of streams. This is obviously not a fringe interest. It is a mainstream phenomenon. The vagal nerve, the most important sound healing tool you already own. Now here is the section that I want you to pay very close attention to, because this is where ancient practice and modern neuroscience converge most precisely. And because what this science reveals is that you already have access to one of the most powerful sound healing tools that exists, and it costs nothing. It requires no equipment, and you can use it right now. It is your own voice. The vagus nerve is the longest and most complex of the cranial nerves. It runs from the brain stem down through the throat, the heart, the lungs, and the digestive system, connecting the brain to virtually every major organ in the body. It is the primary nerve of the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digestive system that counterbalance the stress response. Here is what the research shows. When you hum, sing, tone, or chant, the vibration of your vocal cords directly stimulates the vagus nerve through a branch called the recurrent laryngeal nerve. This stimulation activates the parasympathetic nervous system. It reduces cortisol. It lowers heart rate and blood pressure. It increases heart rate variability, which is one of the most reliable markers of nervous system health and resilience. It activates the social engagement system that promotes feelings of safety and connection. Research by neuroscientist Stephen Porges at the University of North Carolina, whose polyvagal theory has become one of the most influential frameworks in trauma research, documents precisely how vagal tone relates to the capacity for emotional regulation, social connection, and resilience in the face of stress. And research specifically on vocal practices, including humming, toning, and chanting, consistently shows measurable vagal activation. Dr. Mladen Golubic, medical director of the Cleveland Clinic Center for Integrative Medicine, has stated publicly that singing activates the vagal system in ways that have significantly clinical implications for anxiety, depression, and trauma recovery. The ancient practitioners who developed sacred chant, who taught that the Om was the primordial healing sound, who used specific vocal tones in temple healing ceremonies, were doing vagal nerve therapy. They just called it something different. The ancients called it sacred chant. The neuroscientists call it vagal nerve stimulation. They're describing the same physiological event from different vantage points across thousands of years. Music therapy in modern medicine. The evidence. The clinical application of music as medicine is no longer alternative. It is entering the mainstream of evidence-based healthcare at an accelerating pace. In oncology, research at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center has documented that music therapy significantly reduces anxiety, pain, and nausea in cancer patients undergoing chemotherapy. The reductions in pain perception achieved through music intervention are comparable in some studies to pharmacological pain management without the side effects. In neonatal care, research published in Pediatrics found that live music therapy with premature infants improved sucking behavior, caloric intake, oxygen saturation, and heart rate stability. The infants exposed to music went home from the hospital sooner. Music literally accelerated their physiological development. In trauma recovery, research on music therapy in post-traumatic stress disorder, the treatment has been conducted at military hospitals, veteran centers, and civilian trauma clinics with consistent findings of significant symptom reduction. Music therapy is now offered at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center as part of the standard treatment protocol for veterans with PTSD. In hospice care, music therapy has been documented to reduce pain, anxiety, and breathlessness in dying patients and to support family members through the grief process in ways that verbal intervention cannot replicate. Music, it appears, accompanies us all the way to the threshold of our leaving, our deaths. The rise of the sound healing profession reflects this growing evidence base. There are now more than 9,000 board-certified music therapists in the United States alone. Sound bath practitioners, singing bowl healers, and frequency-based therapists are working in hospitals, rehabilitation centers, schools, and private practice at a rate that would have seemed implausible a decade ago. This is not a trend, it is a shift. Everything we have talked about today is genuinely fascinating, but wisdom without practice is just information. So let's talk about what you can actually do with all of this, starting today, starting right now if you want. Tool 1, the daily hum. This is the simplest, most scientifically supported, and most immediately accessible sound healing practice available to you, and it takes just 2 minutes. Sit comfortably, close your eyes. Take a slow breath in. On the exhale, hum. Not a specific note, just whatever comes naturally. Feel the vibration in your chest, your throat, your skull. Let it be low and slow. Continue for 2 minutes. Research by the Alzheimer's Research Foundation has documented that daily humming practice reduces cortisol measurably within a single session. Research on nitric oxide production, a vasodilatory compound that promotes cardiovascular health, has found that humming increases nasal nitric oxide production by a factor of 15 compared to a silent nasal breathing. Your hum is literally changing your body chemistry in real time. Do this in morning before you reach your phone. Do it in the car before you walk into a difficult meeting. Do it in the evening as a nervous system reset. Just 2 minutes. Every day, the cumulative effect is significant. Tool 2. Intentional music listening. Most of us have music playing in the background of our lives as ambient noise. Intentional music listening is something entirely different. It is a practice. Choose music specifically for the state you want to cultivate. For focused work, research suggests instrumental music at approximately 60 to 70 beats per minute promotes alpha wave states associated with relaxed concentration. For emotional processing, choose music that resonates with the emotion you are working with rather than music that bypasses it. For relaxation, research on delta wave music, including Tibetan singing bowl recordings and specific ambient compositions, shows measurable nervous system deceleration within 15 minutes. Turn off the other input. Sit with the music. Let it be the primary experience rather than the background to another experience. This changes what it does to your nervous system entirely. Tool 3. The sound bath at home. A sound bath does not require a studio full of crystal bowls and a certified practitioner. It requires a comfortable place to lie down, headphones, and a high-quality recording. Begin with a YouTube or Spotify search for 432 Hz healing music, Tibetan singing bowl meditation, or binaural beats, theta waves. Lie down. Cover yourself with something warm. Put on headphones if possible, because the binaural beat effect requires each ear to receive its specific frequency separately. Set a timer for 20 minutes. Close your eyes, breathe slowly, do nothing else. Research consistently shows that 20 minutes of this kind of intentional sound immersion produces physiological changes comparable to a full night of additional sleep in terms of cortisol reduction and nervous system recovery. That is a significant return on a 20-minute investment. Tool 4. Toning the emotional release. Toning is the practice of sustaining a single vocal note for an extended period, allowing the vibration to move through the body. It has roots in every vocal healing tradition we discussed today, and has modern research support through its vagal activation effects. Find a private space. Take a breath. Open your mouth and let a sustained tone emerge. It does not have to be beautiful. It does not have to be musical. It just has to be genuine. Follow the sound where it wants to go. Let it shift pitch if it wants to. Let it become louder or softer. Stay with it for 5 to 10 minutes. Many people find that specific tones naturally correspond to areas of emotional holding. A tone that starts in the chest may loosen grief that has been sitting unacknowledged. A tone in the head may release mental tension. This is not mysticism. This is the resonance principle applied to the body's own tissue. Tool 5. Creating a personal sound ritual. The most powerful way to use sound as medicine is to build a consistent intentional ritual around it, because the brain, as we know from behavioral research on habit formation, creates neurological shortcuts for behaviors that are repeated consistently in specific contexts. Choose a time. Choose a consistent sound practice. Choose a space if possible and use it every day, even for just 5 minutes. Over time, the act of sitting in your sound practice space and beginning your practice will itself begin to trigger the neurological state you are cultivating. The context becomes the medicine. Your personal sound practice might combine a 2-minute daily hum, 10 minutes of intentional 432 Hz or binaural beat listening, and a brief toning session when emotional material is present. That is a complete and scientifically grounded sound healing practice that costs nothing and requires no special training, just your attention and your commitment. Because the picture that emerges when you hold all of this at once is one of the most remarkable in all of human experience. 40,000 years ago, a human being in what is now Germany carved a flute from the wing bone of a vulture and played music. 60,000 years ago or more, Aboriginal Australians were singing the world into existence, a long past that are still wakened today. Ancient Egyptians built temples whose proportions were calculated to produce specific resonances in the human nervous system. Pythagoras prescribed musical modes, the way a physician prescribes medication. The Hindu tradition developed the most sophisticated tonal healing system in the ancient world, and it is still practiced daily by hundreds of millions of people. And then, a Saturn probe transmits the planet's electromagnetic frequencies back to Earth, and NASA converts them to sound. And they match the frequencies that ancient traditions prescribed for healing. And neuroscientists confirm that the vagal nerve is directly stimulated by the same vocal practices that Egyptian priests and Vedic chanters used thousands of years ago. And clinical trials in cancer hospitals and neonatal wards and veterans treatment centers confirm that music heals in ways that medicine is only beginning to fully document. The thread is unbroken. It runs from the first bone flute to the binaural beat playlist on your phone, from the harmony of the spheres to NASA's planetary recordings, from the sacred Om to the vagal nerve stimulation protocol at the Cleveland Clinic. Sound has always been medicine. The ancient world knew it intuitively. Modern science is confirming it systematically, and you have access to it right now, in your own body, with your own voice, without spending a single dollar. That is the gift. Use it. Every song your body has ever responded to, every sound that has ever stopped you in your tracks and made you feel something real, was not an accident. It was your cells recognizing the medicine they were made for. This episode is brought to you by Unhack Your Brain. They are doing on Substack what we are doing on this podcast, taking the intersection of science and ancient wisdom seriously, and asking the question that I think is one of the most important questions of our time. What is the modern world actually doing to us? Not in the abstract, specifically, neurologically, and physiologically. The hustle culture we discussed, the toxic social media loops, the sleep disruption from blue light screens, the division and polarization that is reshaping how we think and what we are capable of feeling. These are not just cultural problems. They are brain problems, and Unhack Your Brain approaches them exactly that way. The writer, Matt Kellen, draws on anthropology, neuroscience, NLP, breathwork, meditation, and ancient practical traditions to understand what is going wrong and what we can actually do about it. The same framework we use here, the science that explains why the old wisdom works. It is a free Substack, twice weekly posts, no paywall, just genuinely useful writing from someone who takes your brain and your well-being seriously. Find the link to Unhack Your Brain in the show notes. Subscribe for free. Today we traveled far. We began with 40,000-year-old bone flutes found in Germany. We moved through the Egyptian healing temples and the Pythagorean harmony of the spheres. We arrived at Stefan Kolsch's brain imaging studies showing that music activates more of the brain simultaneously than any other known stimulus. We traced the Aboriginal songlines. We explored the Hindu raga tradition. We examined the vagal nerve research of Stephen Porges, and we looked at the clinical music therapy programs now operating at Memorial Sloan Kettering and Walter Reed. We gave the 432 Hz debate the full and honest treatment it deserves. We explored the solfeggio frequencies with appropriate scientific honesty, and we discovered something genuinely remarkable about your own voice. Your hum, just your hum, measurable, research-supported, physiologically active, and available to you right now for free. We also walked away with 5 practical tools you can begin using today. But here's the one thing I want you to carry. Sound is not a decoration. It is not background noise. It is not entertainment that happens to affect your mood on the way to work. Sound is a fundamental force in the universe. Your body is made of vibrating matter. Your nervous system responds to frequency with measurable physiological precision, and the ancient traditions that built entire civilizations around this understanding were not primitive people guessing in the dark. They were paying extraordinarily careful attention in a way that we are only now beginning to relearn. So start there. Start humming today. Right now if you want. Just 2 minutes. That is where the practice begins, and see what opens for you. If this episode gave you something to think about, please follow the Beyond Horizons podcast wherever you are listening so you never miss a future conversation. And come join our Horizons community at www.horizynsinc.com. That's HORIZYNSINC.com, where you can meet like-minded individuals, find amazing products, and take workshops from our many curated vendors. Each week, we explore new ideas, traditions, and perspectives that help us live more balanced and meaningful lives. Thank you for being here. Thank you for doing the kind of work that takes courage. And until next time, keep exploring what lies beyond the horizon.
We're going beyond horizon.